name is Brian Hafferkamp. I'm the designer of On Base Baseball and several other baseball games. I just wanted to take a quick moment to walk through something that comes up quite often with my games, but also with other baseball games, especially. This seems to happen more in baseball than other games. But gamers are worried about accuracy, the accuracy of the numbers that are going to be produced from the cards or from the roster sheets or whatever you're using. They want to know, is it going to come out like the actual season? So if you're playing 1986, are you going to get some accuracy to that? Now, accuracy is a multifaceted thing. It means different things to different people. Some people want exactly the same numbers to come out, and that's a determination. The game that gets closest to that is the game that is the most accurate. For some people, they have more, that's called an absolute accuracy. And some people have more of a relative accuracy idea, which is Barry Bonds should hit a lot of home runs, and Rafael Furcal should get a lot of bunt hits, and Jacob deGrom should get a lot of strikeouts. Like there's just things that people should be doing relative to the rest of the population of players. They should be doing things better than other people, right? So that's called relative accuracy. Is the player accurate to his ability, even if he had 42 home runs for the year, and he hits 37? That's good for a lot of people. That means he's hitting home runs. Or if he hits 47, then that's okay too. It's just, is a home run hitter a home run hitter? Is a slap hitter a slap hitter? Is Tony Gwynn gonna hit 68 home runs? That's not very accurate to the kind of player that he is. And if he hits 242, that's also not accurate to the kind of player he is. So as a designer, the thing that I can do is I can try to create an environment around the game engine in the game that is realistic to that particular environment that the player played in, and I can provide player ratings, I guess, if that's how you want to say it, player ratings that interact with the engine in the most realistic way possible, so that a player the stature of Barry Bonds as a home run hitter, or as George Brett as a doubles home runs OPS guy, that he is going to be in the right spot as a hitter. Now, there's lots of different things that come into play, including dice rolls, which are almost completely randomized. So there's a lot of random things that come into play which can affect the numbers one way or the other, and so you may not come out with exactly the same numbers, but they should be producing in the same kinds of ways. So that's all that I can do. And then once the dice start going, once the game actually gets played, there's no way to reproduce a game or a season or even 4 at-bats for a player, because all the variables have changed, and all the variables that are actually in a game may not even be there on the tabletop game that you're playing. So you have to kind of take some of those things with a grain of salt, but any game that tries to be a simulation or a realistic representation of a game should be trying to create an environment that is realistic, and they should also be trying to create players that are as realistic as possible, based on the game engine and how those players interact with the game engine and the environment. So I did a little bit of research just to show you. That's one thing. So the second part of this is I just want to show you that it doesn't matter how many at-bats that you get, because sample size is a real big part of this, right? If you only take 500 at-bats or 700 at-bats, you're going to see a lot of variance between reality and actual, and then what's been simulated. And the fewer the number of at-bats, the more variance there's going to be. So this is sort of a statistical analysis issue, a statistical problem, as it were. It's not really a problem. It's just a statistical reality that there is variance in low sample sizes. And the lower the sample size, the more wild the variance is. So the higher the sample size, the less variance there should be. But I'm going to show you that there still is even a little bit of variance, even out to the thousandths place. So we have, this is Barry Bonds' 2003 season. So this is his season, 130 games. He had 550 at-bats, 133 hits. He batted .341 that season. He had 45 homers. I can't replicate RBIs because that's just too difficult, but he did have 148 walks and 58 strikeouts. So we can try to replicate this, and I've done that with this little simulation here. So what it'll do is it will roll. I have it set to roll 550 times for plate appearances, and it's going to roll 550 times. After each time, it's going to assign one of these outcomes. This is part of what makes doing a baseball simulation easy and possible to a pretty accurate extent, is that every time there's an outcome, there's one person who kind of determines the outcome, the pitcher or the batter. There can be an interaction between the two, but ultimately it comes down to there's only one sort of baseline outcome that can happen on the play. So we have all these. We have this is going to be the number of rolls that each of these outcomes has out of the 550. This is going to be the percentage of this against the 550. And then this is our constant. So this is this is Barry Bonds' actual numbers. So this is how many outs per at bat that he had, and this is ground outs per at bat, and everything is per at bat. So this is his home run percentage was 8. And I'm using the wrong term. It's not per at bat. It's per plate appearance. So per time getting up to the plate, right? An at bat takes out walks and hit by pitch and sacrifice flies, but this is per plate appearance is what we did. Okay, so we're going to get the number of actual at bats. So this is minus walks, hits, hit by pitch. In all of these outcomes, it's minus these two things. We're going to get his hits, so we're actually going to get his batting average calculated here, and then we'll see how close we can get. So we're just going to roll this once, and well, let's roll this twice. Okay, so we get, and each time it's going to clear everything out. So you see, after 550 at bats, he makes a few more outs than he did in real life. He grounded out more. He had flyouts at about the same rate and lineouts at the same rate. He struck out a little bit less. So you have 50 Ks here in our simulation. You have 58 in real life. And he had a few less singles and doubles and home runs. So he had a few less hits. He had 133 hits in real life, 392 at bats. He had 390 at bats here. So our simulation is pretty close, but you can see with a small sample size, those 15, 16, 17 hits led to a sub 300 batting average. So let's run it again. We get a little bit closer here, 391 at bats, 130 hits. So we're a few at bats short of, we're one over, and we are a few hits short. So his batting average is down to 332. But you can see we're spot on with the outs that are made. We're spot on with the ground outs, and almost right there with fly outs. Everything, there's a little bit of variance here. With hit by pitches, he got hit by pitch a little bit less in our simulation. Hit a few more singles and a few more doubles and a few less home runs, right? But his triples are right on par. So you can see there's some statistical variance here, and the more we run it, the more variance you're going to get. So it's down into the hundreds place. The hundreds place. So that's where we're getting a lot of our variance here. We're not going to get, although here we get it in the tens place. So there's quite a bit of variance here. He walked a lot more than he would have, which with 118 hits, it bumps his. Remember before we had 116 hits, but he was sub 300. Now he's over 300 because he had more walks, which is going to cut down his number of at bats, which changes everything. So you can see the statistical variance here. So we're getting a little bit, and we're getting kind of wild swings, 296, 330, 313. We're getting kind of wild swings in his batting average. So if we go through and we and we expound this his plate appearances, we just set it to 5,000. So now instead of 500, we're going to do 10 times as many plate appearances whenever this is run. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so now we run 5,000 at bats, and really you can kind of ignore these because these are just, they're not on par with his year. But there are a few things. So these are our averages against his year. These are the numbers, and then this is bringing it out to his batting average, which is the only thing applicable. He didn't have 1,200 hits, obviously, because that's 5 times or 10 times as many at bats as he had. So not 10, yeah. Excuse me. So you can see we get a lot less variance here, a little bit in the walk, so a little fewer walks than he had in real life. But otherwise, everything is way closer to reality. And because of that, you're getting a lot closer to his actual batting average, which was 341. So you can see after 5,000 at-bats, we get a lot closer because there's less statistical variance there. Now, if we run it again, we're going to get a different number, and you'll still see that there's quite a bit of variance here in strikeouts. And all of these matter because more or fewer strikeouts. Really, the only thing that matters up here with outs is the outs. That's the only thing being calculated into some of these things. So you're getting some statistical variance here with the number of hits because singles are down. Triples are almost in line with what he had. And if we divide this by roughly 10, you're going to get about 41 home runs, which in that year he had 45. So we're getting pretty close to his actual numbers. If we run it one more time, now we get a little bit more. But almost all of these numbers are spot on. You get a little bit of variance here with the type of outs and with outs itself. So he made fewer outs, which is going to affect his average because everything else is in line. Making fewer outs probably means that he had a few more hits along the way. Okay, so we still get some noise, and I've played around with this plate appearance number and tried to see at what level how many at bats does it take before I consistently get no statistical variance. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter how many at bats I put in here. So this is 100,000 at bats. So we've taken our 5,000 and we multiplied that by a factor of 20. And so now we have 20 times more at bats than we just had. And the reality is we're probably still going to get some statistical variance, which we do even here at 100,000 at bats, which Barry Bonds had in his career. He had 12,606 plate appearances. So this is 100,000 plate appearances, which is roughly 8 times as many at-bats as he had in his entire career. And we're trying to replicate one season, and we're still not able to do that perfectly. You can see there's variance here in the flyouts, and not much else. But we are still getting some statistical variance, and we still don't come out with his exact average, even after 100,000. So let's run it again. Here we get right on his average, and we still, with the outs, we're still getting some variance. With Ks, we're still getting some variance. But most of these statistics down here with his hits are right on. Let's see if we can run it one more time without crashing it. 342, again, very close. And we get a little bit of variance with the flyouts and outs. So even at 100,000 at-bats simulated, we are still getting some statistical variance from his actual numbers. And let me just walk you through my my dice roller here. So you don't really need to see the HTML part, I guess. So this was league average based off of the year 2022. I just took the league average and put that in a 1 to 1,000 roll. So basically we're rolling a die here with 1,000 sides on it one time. And so we get a 1 to 1,000 roll. And every time we click the button, we're rolling this function. So for Barry Bonds, a 0 to 365 is going to be an out. So he made 36.5 of his plate appearances were outs. The rest were these numbers here. So it was a strikeout, walk, hit by pitch, or some type of hit. These three numbers here are just a breakdown of this 0 to 365. You can see 0 to 110. So you can read this as, you would put a decimal there. So it's like 11% of his plate appearances ended in a ground ball, and then another 10 to 12%, or I guess 10 to 15 or 16% ended in fly balls, and then another whatever was left. What is that? Another almost 9% or so were line drives. I think the real percentages were like 11, 17, 16, something like that, and then 9. For his strikeout percentage, it was about half of the league average, which, his strikeout percentage was only about 11 or so, which is unbelievable. His walk percentage was like 23, which was also about double the league average. And so you can see there's 100 and almost 110 walks available, and for here at the league average there's about 80. So he was quite a bit over the league average. His hit by pitch was right on with the league average. And then singles, doubles, and home runs. So from 919 to 1000 is a home run for Barry Bonds. From 971 to 1000 is the league average home runs. So you can see that he has quite a few more home run chances than the league average. That puts his home run rate, 920 plus 80 get you to 1,000. So his home run percentage is 8. The league home run percentage is 3. So Barry Bonds was killing the ball. So that's how we got there. And then on each dice roll, this is for the outs. So that has to have kind of a separate little evaluation. So if it's 0 to 365, then we mark it as an out. And if it's then we do all the different outs here. So these are ground outs. These are fly outs here. This one is fly outs. And these numbers correspond. So 111 to 276 corresponds with our fly ball outs here. So it's a pretty basic little program that runs through all the different outs. So with each roll of the die, it's a 1 to 1,000. And so we just evaluate what it is. And if it's between these numbers, then we just run, whatever code is in here. And basically we're just, we take whatever number is for triples, if it's a triple, and we add 1. So for every at-bat, it's going through and adding each type of hit or each type of outcome, I guess. And then we can control plate appearances here. We're just running a loop, and we're just looping all of this. This is actually the this is the Barry Bonds function, and then this one down here is just for the league average. So it's the same exact function, but it's got the different numbers in it for the league average. You can see, and then and then this is calculating the average down below. So basically, we're just taking the at bats. We're doing plate appearances minus walks minus hit by pitch, and that gives us our at bats. And then our singles or singles, doubles, triples, and home runs together. And then our batting average is just hits divided by at bats. That's how you figure batting average. And then we just set that to a decimal place to the thousandths. So you get the .000 sort of nomenclature. And then we add those in, and then we're running this. So I can roll this league average one, or I can roll the Barry Bonds specific one. So I did create two different ones. Both of these came out with the same issue because they're statistically correct on the calculation side. So we are using the actual calculations. We're using these numbers here. So Barry Bonds sort of actual numbers, and the way that we get to those is we take our plate appearances and we say singles singles divided by plate appearances is what, right? So singles divided by plate appearances is X percentage of the plate appearances. And then when we add those together, we get how many hits, how many non-out events there are. And the non-out events are everything from here down. And then we have, so this is 37. All the rest of these combined are, what is that, 63. There are 63. So if we combine all these together, these are 63. Is that right? Yeah, because these are, I know a strikeout is an out, but I'm counting that as a separate kind of out. I'm just thinking about these three types of outs, so hitting the ball and making an out. And then we figure out, we take this percentage here and then we break that down here. So we have 28 here plus 9 is 37. So basically it's just this 37 broken out by 11% of this 37 are going to be ground outs, and 17% are going to be fly outs, 9% are going to be line outs. So just breaking the numbers down systematically into what they should be per plate appearance gives us where we are. And so that's how we get statistically to be able to simulate his actual 550 at-bats is by breaking it down this way. So that is correct. And one of the ways that you can test that it's correct is by actually running the simulation and how close do you get to it in those at-bats. So that's actually, it gets us pretty close to his numbers here. 148 walks, 58 strikeouts again. If you come back in, and we'll just run it, excuse me, one more time with his 550 plate appearances. And again, we're using plate appearances and not at-bats. So here we get quite a bit of differentiation here. So he has more at-bats. So he had, he made fewer outs, and that's, led to a lot more production. He's had more at-bats, more hits, and his average went up. Again, more hits, about the same number at bats, but he had more hits this time. And so his average goes to 372. Same thing here, more hits, about the same number of at bats. He's making fewer outs. And then here he's making more outs than he normally would, and a few fewer hits, but more at bats, which means that he had fewer walks, right? Fewer walks, and his hit by pitch are right on. So he has more at bats because he has fewer walks. So But home run numbers are almost spot on. 136 walks against 148. So you're going to get pretty close to his numbers, but you can see you can run this season multiple times over without, and this is in a vacuum. There's no ballpark charts. There's no wind affecting anything. There's no pitchers who have any sort of play in the at bat. There's no difference between the at bats. Someone pointed that out on Facebook. What about the psychological difference of coming up, for your third at bat or against a starter or against a reliever or whatever it is? None of that is taken into account. This is only taking into account his numbers, hitting the ball, and trying to replicate those numbers, and we're still getting pretty wild swings. This one comes pretty close within one hit, within 2 walks of his actual numbers. Home run numbers are spot on, but then this time he doesn't have any triples. I think he had 1 triple, right? 22 doubles, 65 singles. So we have a few less singles, a few more doubles. So you can see that even within this, it comes out into some pretty wild swings. 6 doubles is not that many that are extra, but it is a few. But here we get almost spot on. Here we get almost spot on. Here we get a few more home runs. So, but he also has more at bats, so he had fewer walks. So he's about -9 on his walks. So you can see how everything sort of changes and moves a little bit. So I thought this might be kind of a cool way to show. I'm not trying to silence anybody, but if you are demanding absolute statistical accuracy from a game and you feel like a game has failed because it doesn't come out exactly, or it's plus or minus 10 home runs, or even plus or minus 15 home runs, you can see if you have 400 at bats, which you can, that's why I like this, because I can change the number of at bats, and at 250 at bats you'll see a wild swing in the variance of his. And so now you see, well, we're really looking at the percentages here again, because we're not matching his actual stats, but 285 was his average, and a lot of that's because he walked more and he got fewer hits, right? He got fewer singles. He had fewer home runs than he did in that season. But here he gets more. So fewer home runs, but a lot more singles. And so you just start to see more wild swings. You're even seeing a difference here of 0.03, not just 0.01 or something. And so this is a little bit closer, more closely aligned, but still a lot more strikeouts than normal. So the fewer at bats you have, the more the swings in the variance that you're gonna have. So that was on 250 plate appearances. So that was really why I wanted to show that, is so that you can see that the more time you put in. So that's why they play over the course of a season, 160 games, because baseball is a game that has to build a lot of at bats before you sort of get a feel for who is good and who is not. And that's why the lesser teams will sometimes win in a 5-game series, just because over 5 games there can be a lot of variance in your ability. Over 162 games, you're going to see who the best players are, and the best players are going to play the best generally over the long term. But over 5 games or 7 games, literally anything can happen, which makes the postseason very interesting and exciting, but it can also make it very frustrating. So last year, my Braves won 100 games, and they get into their first series and they get beat 3-1 by the Phillies. The Phillies got hot at the right time, and they were just hitting everything when they hadn't been hitting anything for the first 4 months of the season. So it was sort of a frustrating turn of events, which happens in baseball. And the more layers you add to the playoff system, the more frustrating that can get for the good teams. I mean, it used to be the Braves would be in the World Series because they had the best record in the league, and then they would just be right there. But it doesn't work that way anymore, and so with that, variance adds excitement, but it also can add some frustration for teams because they play great over a long period of time, and the reward is they don't have to. They don't have as good a chance to win as they would if you just put them right into the World Series. So it's a little bit frustrating when your team is good. It's great if you're the Phillies and you won, you're 5 games over 500 and you make it to the World Series because your team gets hot. And you do have to win those games, but the reality is it's easier to win in those short series. So just one of those things about statistical accumulation, and over time you get more accurate results. Over a shorter period of time you don't have as accurate results, but the wild swings make for more fun, honestly. And so that was a point brought out by someone on YouTube as well, or on Facebook, was having some variance and even some wild swings in variance can make for a more fun game, which is true, because you truly don't know what's going to happen when you come to the tabletop. And some guys play, some ladies, some guys play for that reason. So that's, I think that's a choice that the game designer has to make. How many swings are we going to have? How far away from absolute accuracy will this game take us? If we only play a series, are we going to get a true sense of the game? If we play an entire season replay, you're probably going to get closer to quote-unquote reality, or at least what happened in real life. But so many factors come into play, like injuries and ballpark effects and weather, if you're playing that kind of stuff. So that's just one of those things that comes along with the games when you're designing it, is how much are you going to put into the game to try to get it that little bit closer to absolute accuracy. So hopefully that's interesting to you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below, and I will tell you now that this channel is on base right now, but it's going to be flipping over to the Clark and Addison Gaming Company, and that's going to be sort of my new umbrella name that I'm putting all of my games under, which I have several baseball games and football game coming out very soon. I've got a couple basketball games. So the stable is growing, and we're bringing in more games and different sports. I still have a couple of baseball ideas. This is leading me, this sort of research is leading me to an interesting baseball idea, which would be here. You can see all these stats. And this is me reproducing what I did on this research here. These numbers here are actually these numbers here. So outs per plate appearance, fly balls, line drives, and then I'm converting those into a 1 to 1,000 dice roll, and then that data gets converted into these cards. So now you have cards with each player's variables of these different outcomes, and you can see the difference between Austin Riley. So he's got about a 6% home run chance, and Dansby Swanson has a 4, right? So there's a 1 out of 1,000 chance that Dansby Swanson hits a triple. There's a 2 out of 1,000 chance that Riley does. And this is based on their actual statistics. So, no, sorry about that. And then I have, a couple teams here. Down here you can see this is the Mets with Nimmo and McNeil. And, I'm just testing those things out to see if that could be something, if that can be the beginning of something. And you'd have to add in pitching and base running and defense and all the different things. But that's essentially what I did with Quick Pitch Baseball, which is one of the games that you can pick up actually for free. You can get entire seasons for free of Quick Pitch Baseball, and that's it's based off of the same thing, which I guess if you look it up, you can see on the home page that it's based off of What's going on there? Well, that's not working very well, is it? Thought I was going to show that, but anyway, that's not good. Anyway, it's based off of the same thing. It's just that all the action comes off of the pitcher instead of being a true 50-50 game. But maybe I started making a 50-50 game, and then I realized some things and experimented with the pitchers. So maybe I can make that into a true 50-50 so I can get the most accurate results using 3D10s and then using these charts to try to reproduce, at least from the card perspective, as accurate a result as I possibly can. So anyway, the Clark and Addison Gaming Company is going to be sort of my new umbrella organization. That there will be one website, and that one website will house all my games. All the ordering and delivery of PDFs and everything is going to be very familiar and be the same. But now I'll be able to manage everything all in one place. So it should be a little bit easier for me. It should be easier for you to discover all the different games that I have. So if you're into more than just baseball, like I said, I have a football game that's coming up very soon called No Huddle. And it's the cards look like this. So that's actually going to be the 2022 season. So still working on the game guide for that, but that's really mostly all that's left, other than getting it up on the website. And so as I launch that, I'll be launching the website as well, and then you'll be able to have access to purchase that game. And then there's a couple of basketball games here. I'm working on golf as well. And so there's lots of different types of games, but having to sell and market to a bunch of different websites is not easy. So as you kind of gather more games, you need to bring them all under one place, so that I can just say go here, and then you can learn about all the different sports and types of games that I have. So that will be easier in the future, and hopefully since I'm doing it kind of close to the beginning of things, not too confusing for everyone. But yep, that is the future, and that's the things that I've been working on. Just wanted to show you this research. Maybe it's interesting to you, maybe it's not. I like to think that people who are in my games are into stats and into sabermetrics, especially as there's no sabermetrics necessarily in this. This is just sort of boring old stats, but trying to get the game into the right space as far as being as accurate as I can with the components should create accuracy in the long run. So that if you went through and you played with these teams, and you went through and you did 162 season or 162 games worth of at bats. So if you did 699 plate appearances with this Matt Olson card, you should be able to come out with statistical, almost absolute accuracy over those 700 at bats. You're going to get very close to these home run numbers and the walk numbers and the strikeout numbers. That's if you don't add pitching. If you just roll 3D10 dice off of this card, you should come out pretty close to where he is over that number of plate appearances, because we're using the exact same formula that I did in the simulation to create the card. So the card, we're just taking this simulation here and we're putting it on a card, and then you're rolling against that card. So as long as your dice aren't loaded, as long as your dice are pretty true, or using some sort of online dice roller, you should come out pretty close over that number of at bats. And for sure, if you rolled 10,000 times with Matt Olson's card, you're going to come out really close to those numbers in the end. So that's the goal, is to be as accurate on the front end as possible. And then as you play out the game, you're using as accurate a component as possible to play the game, which means that over time, over a season, you should be able to get really close to those numbers. So that's how it works for us as designers. We break all these things down, and we try to break these numbers down in such a way that it's accurate in that way for each player. And then once you get them and you start playing with the cards, or you start using, managing the team the way that you want to, or putting the lineup together the way you want, that's going to break the absolute accuracy of the game. Once we add pitching in, once we add defense in, there's a variable of defense that if they make different plays than they did in real life, then you've broken the absolute accuracy of this card. But that doesn't mean that the player is not still going to perform as a home run hitter if, say, it's Matt Olson or Austin Riley. They're still going to hit a home run. They're still going to hit a lot of home runs. But they may, Riley might hit 43 instead of 38. He might hit 30 instead of 38. But he is going to hit home runs relative to, let's say, Eddie Rosario, which Rosario, he just had some health issues last year, which led to it. I mean, we're obviously seeing his power again this year, but if you play with him in 2022 as opposed to 2023, you're going to get a kind of a different player because of his performance. So we have to sort of reflect that as well in our cards and try to be as accurate as possible. So hopefully a little bit of a deep dive, but behind the scenes look at, card creation and the numbers that go into it. If you're ever like, oh, I don't know, these guys just guessing whenever they're making these games. Nobody's guessing. We're trying to represent the players in the environment as statistically close as we can. Even if it's, we need a 1 to 10 system to be able to judge this player against that player, you're doing your best to try to make that number as accurate to the player's abilities in a particular area as you possibly can. It's not just like slapping a number on there. Typically, there's some sort of statistical analysis in the background where you're looking at all these things and you're sort of measuring them against one another. All right. I think that's it. Again, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. If you haven't subscribed, click subscribe. There'll be lots of different content on here. It's not just going to be on-base baseball. So there'll be baseball, basketball, football, golf, and whatever else I come up with over the next however long. And it's been a good ride. I think this new chapter with the Clark and Addison Gaming Company is going to be a new chapter in this, and sort of opening up the endeavor to more things. So hopefully it's a good thing and not a bad thing, and that it will be embraced as much as you've embraced on-base baseball and all my other games too. All right. I think that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.